Remote meetings have quite a few benefits. Data security isn't one of them. Until now. Presenting CLOUTHUB Meets, a safe, simple, and secure meeting platform that puts you in complete control of your data. With HIPAA-compliant paid and free plans, cheaper than Zoom, there are no apps to install, no saved data, and no big brother tracking your every move. Stop worrying if the services you use are using you, and sign up for CLOUTHUB Meets today at clouthubmeets.com.
If you are not legally serving, if you don't have an oath of office, everything you did doesn't count. You're an actor.
You're not going to get your country back by watching a president fall off plane steps.
We're going back to 1776 all over again.
I'm here to save my country and at least live the rest of my life not under tyranny and communism.
This is Truth Be Told. Truth Be Told, hosted as always by attorney Todd Callender.
Hello, Vax Choice community. Thank you so much for joining us for this special episode of Truth Be Told. Today we have a guest who is a former retired ICE officer, and we're going to cover some very exclusive special information today about the Mexican border crisis. So I'm not going to take up too much time, but if you could, just please follow us at all of our social channels at Vax Choice. And sign up for our newsletter if you can, so that you can be aware of things like this in the future at vaxchoice.com. Yeah. Todd, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Melissa. It's such a strange occurrence. Both of us have animals on our heads. But what you said, by the way, Melissa, is really important. Folks, do subscribe for Vax Choice. The newsletter goes out every day, sometimes twice a day. You will get astounding information. We've got full-time research people that do nothing but try and stay ahead of everything else that's happening, trying to give us the little dots, the little pieces of data that we can hook everything together to try and make sense of what's happening. And if you've been following along for as long as we've been doing this, then you've been ahead of the curve yourself. And that's the whole point, right? We're trying to get ahead of anything, any kind of danger coming down the road, trying to plan, trying to stop the execution of the democide in progress. And that's no joke. We all know that. So part of tonight, which is really quite interesting to me, is we have a retired ICE agent. He's a special agent, Homeland Security. ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He is Victor Avila. He is an expert in this stuff. He retired some years ago, I think 2015 or so, but he's still involved, and this is the whole point. It takes one. It takes one, and Victor is one of those. Melissa is one of those. Dan Roberts, one of those. I mean, the list goes on, and pretty soon it's not just one, it's all of us, and that's what's happening. So as we are changing the tide in this thing, the desperation grows on the other side, and they're becoming more obvious to everybody, to the point where it's literally laughable. So I want to set the tone a little bit here today with what it is Victor's going to say, so that we have some context as to how absurd all of this really truly is. So you can take it all in, make decisions for yourself on what it is you want to do to plan for this outcome. Melissa, if you would, please show us Mr. Macron and his concerns over the Russian invasion to Europe.
Aujourd'hui est mortelle. Elle peut mourir. Elle peut mourir, et cela dépend uniquement de nos choix. Mais ces choix sont à faire maintenant.
The battle to build a strong Europe. Build a strong Europe. Huh? I'm sorry, how did it go from this homogenized group of people on the continent to now it's fractured? Oh, was it because our government started a color revolution in Ukraine? Is it because the Ukrainian government, supported by us, was shelling its own citizens in the Donbass region? Is it because they asked for help from President Vladimir Putin, who provided that help? Is it because Mr. Putin is actually honoring the Minsk Accords, which were agreed with the government of Ukraine post-2014, that said effectively the Donbass area is going to be an area protected, independent states protected by Russia. All of this was already agreed. The only guy living up to the deal was Mr. Putin. And Mr. Lavrov, his foreign minister, here's what he's got to say about all this, this doom and gloom from Macron.
Mr. Lavrov, what do you want to say about Macron's recent remarks on sending troops to Ukraine?
He literally, he just laughed. I mean, that's the absurdity. Is that Macron is going to send his French Foreign Legion to Ukraine to buttress the troops that are now gone. The Ukrainian troops are gone, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured that out by now. The war is over. It's a facade. It's a facade no different than our government. Everybody here knows there's no oath of office. Everybody in these appointed positions are actors. They are raping what they can of our country for themselves before it all runs out, before they get caught. And by the way, they're already caught. So what are they going to do? Raise as much hell as they possibly can. So you've heard me talk about the One Health Initiative. Well, they're rolling that one out too. So Gretchen Whitaker, she's the governor for Michigan, and she's rolling out some kind of nonsense too. It's instead of a public health emergency, she's having an animal health emergency. Why didn't she call it a public health emergency? Because you all have been talking to everybody else. We have been talking, and their public health emergency nonsense that failed in New Mexico to steal everybody's guns, as they've had to switch gears to zoonotic diseases. Now we have an animal health emergency. But that's just as good, because then the governor can use her emergency powers to kill all the livestock. I mean, we can't have tuberculosis cows. We can't have birds sneezing on each other. So she'll just destroy the animal supply if we let her. If I was in Michigan, I think I'd be finding ways to subvert that mission. And by the way, it's not just our government, right? Let us remember that the attack on humanity, where they unleashed a bioweapon to justify the use of another bioweapon, otherwise known as the shots, that was a global event, right? This all came out in the 1994 Cairo Population Accords. This is not the United States in isolation. This is not France in isolation. This is the world governments doing this. And what are the Chinese going to do with their One Health initiative? Oh, I got an idea. Let's give hamsters Ebola. I mean, can you imagine the scientists in China? We've lost all other options. We're out of options. Let's give hamsters Ebola, and then we'll ship over a bunch of hamsters to the United States, and maybe they'll stop with their guns and stuff. Whatever that was. This is how desperate they are. Because, again, in zoonotic, if hamsters have Ebola, they have designed these pathogens, as you know from Lisa McGee's research, they've designed these pathogens such that they will go between species. They're no longer, confined to hamsterdom. So, on top of that, the absurdity continues to the north of us in Canada. Now it's not enough to threaten people about their free speech rights, because that already happened. Now they're creating a new law. Everybody ignored the other one. And the new law says, hey, we don't like what it is that you said like 10 years ago. We might come and lock you up because. So this is the desperation that we're at. And I'm sorry to be laughing, but it is absurd. Ladies and gentlemen, this means we're winning. When they jump the shark, as the phrase goes, all is lost for them. So all we really have to do is keep the pressure up. We keep foiling all of their attempts to destroy humanity. And we're going to do that again tonight with our friend Victor Avila, retired special agent from Homeland Security. Welcome, Victor. I'm dying to hear what it is you have to tell us. I mean, I had a hit, but brother, welcome.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you so much for having me. Always a lot to talk about. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
It always seems like every single day that passes by, there's something new, and sometimes a lot of this information just it's now kind of becoming complacent, if you will. Oh, illegal aliens coming to the border. Oh, 10,000
isn't that true?
more. And
Isn't that true?
And
Holy cow.
and it's even the word immigration and illegal aliens and all that, people are kind of becoming desensitized to it, and it's not a good thing because it hasn't stopped. The media right now as we speak, there's no one really covering the border. There's no one really. There's nothing really big happening for them to be down there. It doesn't mean it stopped. As a matter of fact, it still continues, and it continues at a rate that is alarming. And what I wanted to share with you, which I haven't shared publicly yet, other than put it out because no one's talking about this. And this is I'm talking about the relationship between the United States and Mexico. Yes. And I talk a little bit from experience here because I worked there and was assigned in Mexico for a couple of years, and I understand the country. Yeah. I understand the country very well. I'm a Texan and American, and yes, my heritage is from Mexico, and so I understand it culturally very well.
But let me point this out, because I know Mexico. I love Mexico, by the way. It's a great country. I've seen some beautiful parts. They're magnificent. One thing I do know about the government of Mexico is they're very, very strict on their immigration laws. You can't just go there and start working. So, right? So what is it? If you don't have a work permit, boy, you'd better go home because they're going to grab you. Do I have that right?
That's absolutely true. And something I kind of joke around sometimes, I say, if something goes wrong in Mexico, a car accident or something happens to you, and they actually open up the law book against you, you're done. You're done because that's how strict their laws are in general. And so a lot of times that's why this corruption exists. But anyway, that's exactly what they're doing right now. Is the Mexican government is denying our U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration agents, DEA agents, their work visa to work inside the country of Mexico. Like when I worked there, you get a work visa, you get a visa to reside in the country, and you go through this process to the State Department to get in there, and they process you to go and be on an official assignment over there as you actually become a diplomat. And you get a diplomatic status. Well, this is already the second time that this has happened. This time around, even the first time, not a lot of people knew about it. And this time they kind of snuck it in there. I actually got it from a Mexican news source. I pay attention a lot, and I watch a lot of the Spanish, Mexican channels because, believe it or not, there's a lot of intel out there. From the truth that you wouldn't get over here.
That's right.
And that's how I actually got it. And then I started making phone calls to my contacts, and sure enough, Mexico right now is not wanting to renew the DA agents assigned in Mexico their work visa, meaning that they don't want to work with them.
Wow. Let me kind of break this down a little bit for people, and you'll certainly know this having been an agent with a red passport, right? If you're doing government stuff in Mexico without authorization to be there by the Mexican government, are you not committing espionage? Isn't that an illegal act for which they could lock you away for a very long time?
It's completely against the law. And I'm actually glad you mentioned the red passport because there's two. The red passport means you're there on an official capacity of the United States of America. And then the ones that I'm talking about are on a black passport, which was I was in, which is a diplomatic passport, meaning that not only are you there, but you're there permanently. You live there. You live there with your family. Your kids go to school there. And so you're integrated. And so the coordination that sometimes you hear about this a lot in the news, both sides always say, Mexico our partner, Mexico our friend, and we're coordinating and we want to help and we want to work with them. Yeah, that all sounds good, but I'm here to tell you the truth. And the reality is that's not the case, that there are some real issues. And specifically under this Mexican administration, I'm talking about AMLO, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the president of Mexico, who is a socialist communist guy, ideology-wise. And basically, I feel comfortable saying that they hate us. They hate the United States. They don't like us. They don't want anything to do with us other than they want the fruits of the United States.
Yeah, of course.
They want the $63 billion in remittances that was sent from illegal alien Mexican nationals in the U.S. to Mexico just last year alone. 63 billions with a B.
Astounding.
that is part of their GDP. So if you remove that money today, Mexico would start collapsing. So
Wow.
that they want. But now they're getting very, very what's the word here? Very comfortable in their position of dictating to us because they know that the U.S. right now is functioning out of a place of weakness.
Yeah.
Now they're demanding.
Wait. It's not functioning at all. I'm sorry, but it really isn't. And I think that's the point, is that they feel emboldened. And I wanted to ask you, sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to ask you your estimation, your belief, your observations as it relates to the cartels actually managing the governors of Arizona and New Mexico. I mean, that's something I've heard more than once. Do you have an idea about this?
There's definitely influence in financially, I think. You have to understand that we talk about the human smuggling, we talk about the drugs, we talk about the proceeds of these cartels, but sometimes we don't talk a lot about how that money, where is that money? Where does it go?
Exactly.
Well, it comes back. So the drugs, the people come north, and then the money goes south, but people don't know the money then comes back north, and it gets infiltrated into not only the U.S. banking system, but the world banking system in the form of money laundering and many other forms, by the way. And so we're talking about anything that you can imagine, a business, a transaction. These illicit funds are filtered into these systems to wash it, to make it clean. And some of them eventually become legitimate businesses, believe it or not. And so a lot of these banks along the border in Arizona, Texas, El Paso, McAllen, all the way to California would not function if it weren't for that money infiltrated in these banks. If you would take that money out today, those banks would collapse overnight.
Isn't that the joke? I mean, the joke is on us, Victor, right? I mean, like the politicians, all they got to do is make a phone call to your boss, Alejandro Mayorkas, and say, look, this is political and the investigation stops. How do I know? Because I've been there. I worked in federal law enforcement. I saw it happen myself. The phone call comes from D.C. The investigation is over. So they're laughing. They're laughing at us while they rob the Treasury for themselves. And what's happening to investigations about governors in New Mexico and Arizona that took funding from cartels? I mean, it's prima facie evidence. I mean, there's clearly probable cause. Is there any investigation happening? I mean, we don't really know. But what is the likelihood of that when it's a political situation? And I guess what I'm trying to get at, Victor, is that Mexico itself is a duopoly, in my experience, that you do have the legitimate government, so to speak, but you also have the real government. And the real government operates with a stern fist, and frankly, it's more efficient. That, you know, when the lockdowns were happening in the United States, I had a pal I work with, and he went and spent a couple of years in Mexico living in the city that belongs to the cartel. Everything worked fine. No taxes, no masks, no mandates, no nothing. Right? So where there are voids in government, where there is weakness, it gets filled. And this is what I'm trying to say to you. We have a void in our government. It's not functioning. That void is getting filled. And who is filling it is my question.
Evil organizations, political organizations, and the thing about Mexico, it's, you know, the country is a wonderful country, and the people is we're talking about the government here and the levels of corruption, and yes, there is a parallel government being run there by criminal organizations known as the cartels, which I actually refer to them now as foreign terrorist organizations. I hope that very soon they will be actually not just talked about like that or labeled like that. I want them actually designated just like ISIS, just like the Taliban, because
they're armed like that. I mean, they've got better armament than our border guys.
They cause more harm to U.S. citizens and their own citizens than any other terrorist organization that ever existed. They've killed more people, and that was my point. Is that you could talk about the money and all this, but we're talking about death here. We're talking about life.
A lot.
We're talking about fentanyl. We're talking about sexual exploitation.
Oh, that's true.
Trafficking. We're talking about death. People are dying here. People are getting.
Isn't that the point? Isn't that exactly the point? Our border is open, and they are importing death from there. And to your point, it was a couple of years ago that I last saw the statistics, but I think in Ciudad Juarez, it was like 50,000 Mexican citizens were killed. This was cartels killing Mexicans in Mexico.
I worked there, Todd. I worked there in 2008 when Ciudad Juarez was the most dangerous city in the world, and they were experiencing 350 homicides a month.
Was that all?
Think about that number. 300. It was just, we were just surrounded by death, and this Mexican president has now broken the record under his own tenure, over 155,000 homicides in Mexico, and Mexico has 110 million people in population.
Big country.
Per capita, that's a big number. Yeah. And it's mostly due to organized crime and these cartels. But they had this huge elephant in the room, and they talk about it like if it doesn't exist. You'll see him address these morning press conferences that he has, and they almost never allude to it. When they're pushed a little bit, they'll talk about it or they'll minimize it. But you have firefights right across the border from Roma, Texas. I mean, 50 caliber. You could hear them from the Texas side. People shooting at each other in the middle of the day, and it's not Iraq.
Yes.
And it's not 6,000 miles away.
Yes.
But the reason we're talking about this, and I wanted to talk about what's happening with DEA. And I want to give you a little, kind of a little bit of a backstory here.
Yeah, please.
In 2020, DEA did a wonderful job, and they arrested a recently retired, the highest level government official in Mexico ever to be arrested, a general. My last name was Cienfuegos, was arrested in LAX when he touched down there. He was arrested for drug trafficking, money laundering, other charges, and took him directly to, I think at this point, I don't know if he was taken to New York or DC. I don't remember where he was taken, but he was in custody, and Mexico had a fit. Mexico immediately called Bill Barr, the Attorney General back then, and demanded that they release him because they felt that the United States, in this case DEA, had violated the sovereignty of Mexico because they didn't know about the investigation or whatever.
That they picked up on our side of the border, right? It's not like they went into Mexico to get the guy.
LA, and yes, on the LA side, on the US side, but they didn't like it. They didn't like it. It was a big black eye. And because this is a general we're talking about, and generals act very differently in Mexico than they do here in the US. The generals in Mexico have a very, very strong connection to fighting organized crime. Not like a general here would be for the military. And that's important to note that. So they demanded and pled that so hard, and they said that they were gonna investigate the general if you released them. And in fact, Bill Barr released them back to Mexico.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks later, Mexico concluded that the investigation was done and nothing happened here.
Everything's okay.
As a matter of fact, I just remember this. Just a few months ago, that same general was given an award by Avila across the stage at some ceremony.
Of course he was.
The unity that I want people to know about, that Mexico functions over there with. And so now Mexico, in 2020, as a vindictive, revengeful act, said they actually stripped of all DEA agents of their visas and their diplomatic status because they didn't like what they did with the arrest. And so there was this big fight and diplomatic talks to get them back, and they did. Well, they did it again just yesterday. They don't want to renew it, and people were asking me, well, what's the reason this time? I really don't know the reason, and I'm speculating it's because we arrested when I say we, the United States with the help of the Mexican government arrested a very high level cartel member from the cartel Jalisco New Generation and have extradited him to the U.S.
Wow.
And maybe that's why, because again, who's controlling the whole situation in Mexico? It's the cartels. They run a parallel government. They have influence not just with the police, but heavily involved in politics.
But isn't this refreshing? And I have to tell you, I'm really happy about that because as I talk to you, retired special agent, you were down there giving your life, your days after post government, right? Nobody's paying you to do this, but you're doing it anyway. It's probably why you became a federal cop to begin with. And there are so many other good people wearing blue, right? Whether it's your street cop, your small town sheriff's deputy or whatever. And to hear that our law enforcement are doing their job anyway, despite the fact that the top levels of the DOJ are insanely, they either corrupt or owned by the other side. I don't know how it is. But what that means is that the cops in our government are still doing police work. And my God, is that really refreshing to know?
It really is, and thank you for mentioning that, Todd, because they're still working. They're still putting cases together.
Yeah.
They're still trying to arrest people, despite having our own government against them. And sometimes, believe me,
Yes.
I worked under several presidents, and I'll tell you really quick, I lived through that in two instances. One, under the Obama administration. Obama was the first one to start implementing these policies about who you can and cannot arrest and where you can arrest them, especially when it came to illegal aliens. And
Wow.
there was one case that I was doing. I was about to arrest kind of a mid-level drug trafficker who happened to be an illegal as well. And literally right before I went in to arrest him at a university, he was at a school, I got the order to stand down and not touch him. And that's when the orders came down that you couldn't arrest anybody at a school, you couldn't arrest anybody at a courthouse, you couldn't arrest anybody at a church. And you started having these sanctuary places, right? And anyway, so I just want to let you know that.
No. Listen, man, that's important. And I'm going to trade you a story. A lot of people won't know this about me, but in 1994, I worked for the Denver District Attorney's Office in the drug division, as a matter of fact, and the juvenile division. I had 115 new drug cases every single morning that had to be arraigned. And the deal was this. The Clintons had just supported Corrections Corporation of America's IPO, and President Clinton just put through the mandatory minimum sentencing. So the deal was, my orders were from the chief of that division, if somebody coming from out of the country, Mexico, if they've got 5 keys of coke on their back, I want them time served and deported. But if it's an American, it's a U.S. resident, U.S. citizen, and they got an ounce of pot or more, 25-year mandatory minimum. Why? Because Corrections Corporation of America made a deal with all the governments. They said, we will build you a prison for free if you guarantee us 90% occupancy. Occupancy, as though it's a hotel. They needed slave labor. So they basically convinced the district attorneys around the entire United States to let all the foreigners go, let them go back to running drugs, but you get Americans, that's our slave labor, we'll pay them 50 cents a day was the wage in those days. The whole damn thing is a game. That's all it is, Victor. And the joke is on us. And that was from 1994.
And this game costs lives. It cost the life of my partner. And as you know, in 2011, we were ambushed in Mexico by a cartel, the Zetas cartel. And my partner was killed next to me. I'm here by the grace of God, getting shot 3 times and telling you the story. So on top of all this is personal to me. This is, I've served, I've lived, I've survived, but I'm going to continue to fight to try to save our state of Texas and our country because it is kind of unfathomable to me that I'm seeing what I'm seing that I have actually never seen ever what's happening right now. And not just me. That goes for a lot of border agents and friends of mine. We've never experienced this before because this had actually never happened. Illegal immigration always existed and the cartels always existed, but there was always that enforcement behind it. There was always that fight, that cat and mouse, right?
Yes, of course.
Trying to control. They were trying to not what's happening right now. Right now, the cartels are
unmolested,
giving carte blanche, basically.
That's right.
And so fentanyl is pouring in, human trafficking is pouring in.
But hang on. Let's talk about fentanyl for a minute. As I understand it from General Vallely, more people are dying from fentanyl overdose in the United States per year than all died in Vietnam in the war. Is that right?
That is correct.
Per year.
We're suffering, think about it this way. We're suffering 3 9/11s a month.
Dear
with
Lord.
fentanyl poisonings.
Dear Lord. Well, answer me this if you don't mind. I mean, because you're in Texas now, as I understand it. You've been between Arizona and New Mexico. What is the difference as you see Texas enforcing their sovereignty? Is that working as you juxtapose it to other parts of the border?
Yes and no. And I hate to answer that question like that, but
That's all right.
this is the way it
We want
is.
the truth,
So,
brother.
the truth is, we have Operation Lone Star that's led by our Texas Department of Public Safety. And what it does do that is great is that it's trying to intercept the drug traffickers, human smugglers, and all the bad things that hit the state of Texas. And they're arresting left and right, and chases and rollovers, and I mean, they're overwhelmed.
They're overwhelmed.
The reason why is because of all the activity at the border. But what I do say that this operation is not, and it's not a border enforcement operation, because if it was a border enforcement operation, they would never make it into the state of Texas. And so I want people to make it. I like it. I love it, because if without that, we would have a lot of more people coming into not just the state of Texas, but the rest of the country. And so I'll take it. But I don't want it to be called what it isn't. And it's not border enforcement. It's called border security. No, it's not. Border security to me is at the border, and people don't come in, and people get vetted and checked on the river, on the line. And the state of Texas hasn't gone the final step to do that. I wish they would.
Wow.
I wish support them doing it. The Constitution supports them doing it.
Of course it does.
Article 4, Section 4, Article 1, Section 10, all those things, they cover them doing it, but they won't do it, whether it's political or whatever.
It's a show. It's another show, Victor.
But because of that, the traffic, there's two things that's going on right now. The traffic has shifted to New Mexico, Arizona, and San Diego right now is getting hit hard.
Yeah.
Two things. One is that what Texas is doing. The second thing is that the Biden administration went over to Mexico back in December. They sent Blinken, the Secretary of State, on one trip. Then they sent another delegation over there. As a matter of fact, then Mexico sent a delegation to Washington, D.C. And I'm keeping up with them. Like, what the heck is going on? Well, they're making a deal, and they made a deal, but they never told us about it. I've never heard about it, and I stay on top of it. They never hit the news. They never shared what that deal is. I could tell you what I think the deal is because of what I'm seeing. And that deal is a political deal between both presidents, AMLO and Biden, saying, help me help you, because Biden and the Democrats are getting hit hard with the border crisis, because even Democrats are saying, what the heck are you doing, man? You know, we're getting bombarded in, forget Chicago, New York, and Denver, and all these big cities. In Kentucky, in North Carolina, in all these smaller towns, and they know that, and it's hurting them politically. And so they get with AMLO, and they basically tell AMLO, hey, you got to help us over here. Slow it down, please, on the Mexican side. And Mexico actually does that. Mexico right now has slowed the traffic of illegals coming into Mexico. Tell me one thing, Todd. That they can do it when they want to.
Exactly. They can if they want to. I mean, this is such and no different even in Latin America, where you've got Bukele in El Salvador. In 6 months, he turned that country around. I mean, it was the armpit of Latin America because it was so freaking dangerous. And now you look at this country, it's turned around, the economy's booming, U.S. dollars, Bitcoin flowing everywhere. It's amazing when somebody with ethics takes control and runs with it.
You know who's not coming? Salvadorans are not coming anymore illegally.
Isn't that the truth? Because they're happy where they're at.
And the ones in the U.S. are self-deporting themselves back.
I've heard that. All right, now listen, I'm going to have to ask you a couple questions. We're going to have Melissa come back, but I can't let you get away without asking a couple questions because I know our audience are going to be pissed if I don't. So hold tight, Melissa. Now listen, there is a lot of consternation about people showing up to the airport, and there are two lines. Americans got to go through one line, and they get molested by the TSA. You know, right? Somebody jingles their bells and all the other kind of stuff. Versus the ones who are here illegally, they just walk right on by. What should, as a former law enforcement officer, former federal law enforcement officer in immigration, what is it Americans should be doing or saying to stop this? Because that is freaking absurd.
We should be shouting this at the top of our lungs. I can tell you, because I have witnessed this I have gone through the lines in San Antonio, in El Paso, in Phoenix, in Midland, in McAllen, and all these border, in Del Rio. I have personally videotaped TSA, and I'll say something. I know it's not the person, right? I know it's Mayorkas and the administration that are forcing these people to do this. By the way, the airlines are 100% complicit, giving them a boarding pass to get on the airplane to begin with.
Yes, that's right.
But I have actually questioned. In one case, it was a people from Uganda, from Africa, where in Africa, 48 hours before I met them in the airport, and I questioned them the way I would usually question people as an agent.
Yeah.
And I determined that, in fact, they were illegal.
Yes.
And so I purposely stepped back and was the last one to go through TSA right behind them to see what they were going to show.
Yes.
As form of an identification, because they didn't have any.
Of course not.
And the TSA agent knew that I was recording him, and he pretended to go through the paperwork that Border Patrol had given them during process, and there was no identification, and he let them through. So then when I was next, I clicked my boarding pass with my phone, and then I continued to walk in, and I was stopped, and the TSA agent asked me what I was doing, and I said, I'm going through. And he says, no, you need to show me your ID. I said, I will show you my ID when they show you theirs.
Good.
And
what do you say?
And right away, I'm the bad guy.
Yeah,
right away, he's like, who are you? What do you want? And I told him, I'm telling you who I am. I'm an American. And I am going to get on the same airplane that these people are going to get on. They haven't been vetted. They're from Africa, and were in Africa 48 hours ago, and now they're here in Texas, going to get on the same airplane.
That's right.
Why didn't you let them get on? You're the Department of Homeland Security. How did you? No one, you and I cannot get on an airplane without an ID. I can guarantee you that, because they wouldn't allow me to do it. As a matter of fact, I told them if anyone could get on an airplane without an identification, it's me, because I have a decent, clean background. I used to be a federal agent, but no, you're not going to get on unless you show your ID, and I had to. And this is the crisis that we're in. That it's an upside down world backwards. Live the world that we're in. And so this airline thing is so true. It's out of control.
Let me okay, almost, Melissa, I know you want to ask questions. Just one last one here. Okay, I don't know how much you've seen of our project, or it's actually Operation Proper Oath. You may not know this, but you made reference to Alejandro Mayorkas, a refugee from Cuba, a dual citizen of both the United States naturalized and Israel. And you may not know this, that 5 U.S.C. 3331 and 3332 require him to have a written sworn oath of office. He didn't bother. So if that was your guy in charge of the entirety of Homeland Security, what would you do as an agent? He should be arrested for impersonating a federal law enforcement agent. There's a statute on this. Everything he's done according to statute is void ab initio. He's an actor, and he should be arrested. Why are the agents not doing that?
They are put in a very, very difficult situation. Let me tell you, we're proud of our oath. I took that oath. I took the oath several times. They're proud of that. At one point, I was trying to get the border agents together to rally and say, we're gonna follow the oath that we took and not really care what you say, and what you order us.
Following lawful orders only, constitutional orders. What happened?
It's easier said than done. These guys.
Why? Because of the money? Because people are going to feed their families?
Their insurance, their pensions, all these things, and they've been threatened. They've been.
Wow.
Look at the horse whipping incident. Nothing ever happened, and they were vilified. And nothing ever happened. So they have been put in a very. They are demoralized to begin with.
Well, listen, brother, let me tell you something. This is going to shake out, and it's going to shake out this fall one way or another. My hope is like the military. We stopped the mandate in the military. How and why? 400,000 service members stood up and said, no, we're not following illegal orders. Now, you've got the law enforcement agencies of the United States of America. There are many. My prayer is that everybody follows their constitutional obligations and their oaths, because that paradigm is going to be presented this fall. Undeniably. All right, Melissa, you've been patient. Thank you.
Oh, I feel like I haven't even been waiting. I'm just so interested in the conversation. So I guess some of the questions that I have are, what can us as just average American citizens be doing in our local areas to help maybe keep our awareness up in our surroundings with all of these immigrants being dispersed throughout the country?
I love that question, and I love the fact that you brought in the local. I'm a big believer of local politics and local community activity, because that's really where it all starts. Because where are these illegals going? They're going there. Now, they might not live next to you, and a lot of people say, well, they live over there in their communities. Well, you know what? They exploit their communities too. They rape their own women and their own kids, and they, not only U.S. citizens but themselves as well. But guess what? You will run into them at the grocery store. You will run into them at the gas station and at the mall, and they will be there. So you said the word that I always say: be aware. Awareness is the key. No longer can we, and I use my phone as I call this La La Land. Stay away from the phone for a little bit. Just pay a little bit of attention and become aware of what's going on in your town, in your block, in your neighborhood. You, by doing that, you'd be surprised how much you learn by getting a little bit engaged. And I'm not asking people to go out there and volunteer hours. I'm talking about just becoming a little bit aware of what's going on in your town. Today, I had a really great conversation with a friend of mine who has done an incredible research, and I'm going to help her put this information out as to where all these unaccompanied children are going. Guess what? She broke it down by zip codes in Texas, in Tarrant County. And I was like, well, guess what? When you see that, you're like, if you were paying a little bit of attention, you would know that the illegals are coming here, that unaccompanied children are coming to your town, that they're going into your kid's school and might be sitting next to them with tuberculosis or other diseases. And so that awareness would make you do what? Maybe attend one city council meeting, maybe have you attend a school board meeting, maybe you attend a county commissioner or parish, whatever you call it in your area. But that thing at least would make you'd be surprised what you learn about what these people that are elected officials, by the way, that you might have not voted for, but they have the ultimate power. And I go back to the mask mandates. Remember the mask mandates and what business we could go into? And good, a lot of people thought that was the president and the governor. No, it was your local city mayor and your county commissioner making the call that you could go into a Walmart, but you couldn't go into the local grocery store, locally owned grocery store. And people were like, well, it's the president. No, it was your local people. So some people realize, I knew this, that they have a lot of power and authority. And so this is, by you being aware, it really, first of all, it becomes, to me, it's about public safety, right? Because if you're not safe in your own town, then all of this that we're talking about doesn't matter. And it's coming to people's backyard. And when you start messing, it's two things. It's the economy and it's public safety. When you start affecting people at their pocketbook, they're going to perk up and pay attention. When you start messing with public safety and they don't feel safe in their own home, they're going to start paying attention. That's why you're seeing the shift of these lifelong Democrats, even the far left ones, that are now saying, wait a minute. I don't want this. And I don't like this because I had never been a victim of a crime. And now someone broke into my car and it happened to be an illegal alien. Or I heard that my neighbor or somebody else was raped by an illegal alien. Or even worse, someone was killed by a drunk driver, illegal alien, or murdered by an illegal.
I was just going to tell you that. My friend, when I was 19 years old, was hit and killed by a drunk illegal immigrant and they never caught him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That you go, and it happens.
Sorry, they didn't catch him for a long time.
But they did catch him.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then what's happening too is now everybody knows, or at least is knowing of someone that died of a fentanyl poisoning. And that's how common it's become. Oh yeah, I heard so and so, or the kid from the school. And I asked, just become a little bit aware, and that awareness you'll put it to good use.
Excellent answer. Thank you. Another question that I have for you is, do you think, so a little bit about me, I'm a Pfizer whistleblower. So I worked with the company for about 10 years. And due to my experience I had working there, and then with the pandemic, I am now considered an anti-vaxxer. Do you think, because you mentioned these diseases coming across the border, I can hear it now that it's all of these vaccine hesitant mothers not vaccinating their kids.
Not
Or
this audience. There's not a chance that's this audience.
Let me tell you what it is. Let me tell you what it is. They're coming from third world countries. There is no vaccinations. There are no vaccinations. I'm going to give you a personal thing that happened.
That's why they're healthy.
When I went through the shooting and I was extracted and my family was extracted from Mexico, and eventually they took us to Virginia and DC area to recuperate. My kids were not allowed into the Virginia public school system until they got additional shots because they were coming from Mexico. And I said, wait a minute, we're U.S. citizens. We're coming from the U.S. Embassy, and my kids are up to date on everything. Nope, they will not be allowed until they get additional vaccinations because we came from Mexico, because we had been living there. And it kind of blew my mind. And so now, not just from Mexico, from all over the world, these people are showing up with tuberculosis, flesh-eating bacteria, lice, syphilis, polio. Are you kidding me? And so they're coming to your local town. Denver actually is a good example. $130 million spent on illegals in Denver alone. But their answer wasn't, you know what, let's control the border, let's stop them at the border. No, they're asking the money of the government, of the federal government, for reimbursement, just like New York is. Well, we're spending billions of dollars on all those illegals. Instead of saying, let's secure the border, no, we want the money to reimburse us. That's not the answer. But this is what is causing lice. By the way, there was an outbreak. I was in El Paso last year. There was an outbreak of lice amongst the illegals that were there. And then the kids are placed next to your kid in school, and then your kid comes home with lice. And so the ERs, the illegals are using the emergency rooms across the nation as their primary care facilities.
That's right.
And so when you go as a U.S. citizen with a broken arm or whatever emergency you have to wait. You should see McAllen. You should see El Paso, Texas, and the waits that there are because they're treating illegal aliens first.
Oh, wait. Do the U.S. citizens have to go through a TSA security at the hospital and the other ones don't? Is that how that works these days?
It is. Isn't it absurd?
I mean, well, it is. It's preferential treatment. And by the way, all of this is in conformity, I should say, with Agenda 2030. It used to be the agenda for the 21st century, Agenda 21. Now it's Agenda 2030. I would have you know, three primary goals: the elimination of private property rights, the elimination of borders. Where have we seen that one? Mm-hmm. And a reduction in the world's population by 7 billion people. We are well on our way to that. I'm just going to slip in real quick, Melissa. I got a question, and I'll shut up. What I want to understand is you said a few minutes ago that some of your pals were worried they would follow the illegal orders of Alejandro Mayorkas because they didn't want to get fired. But isn't it true it's almost impossible to get fired as a special agent in the government or as any law enforcement in the government? So what are these guys afraid of? Give them some words to man up. We need them to follow the Constitution.
Yes, and let me tell you, that they would use immediately and find a reason to fire him immediately because it's politically driven and it's ideology driven. Even though
if they do their job, that's politically driven.
And I say it all the time. It is so demoralizing, especially as a law enforcement agent, to be told that you're not going to be able to do the scope of the duties that you were trained to do.
Don't enforce the law.
However, you're going to do this.
Right.
And this is illegal. The parole system, the asylum system, all that the Biden administration is doing is illegal. And all these illegals that have the 15 million that have come in, they're going to find themselves with absolutely no status. Because what you said earlier, it's like when I did a search warrant or an arrest warrant. If I did it illegally, and whatever I grabbed from that premise would be
fruit of the poisonous tree.
Fruit of the poisonous tree, and it would be inadmissible. Well, that's exactly what's happening. All of this has been issued. Yes. All these paroles and permits illegal, so they have no standing. And I hear your concern. I wanted all these sectors of border agents to do it for one day. That was my goal. I tried this is 2 years ago, by the way.
Yeah.
I started having conversations with the Border Patrol Council, their union, and say, well, maybe the union can come up and say, one day
they're part of the problem.
Line and hold the line. I couldn't get them to get there because
No, you never will. Those are the real commies. They are not on your side. They are instrumentalities of the owners. That's all they are. I wish I could tell you otherwise. How are we doing on time, Melissa? You look like you're itching.
We're doing good, but I did have one more
Okay.
kind of statement / question because I care about people. And I do think America is still the greatest country in the world, even though we're on the decline. Maybe we're a little weak right now. But we don't want to be like racist to people, right? Like we don't want to assume, oh, these people don't speak English well, they're of a different color or something. You're an illegal immigrant and you're automatically not, soft-hearted to the people who are also coming here that also just truly, there are people who are truly wanting help. So
Yeah,
is there
that's
like
true.
maybe a difference? Like, is there any way to know maybe the signs of the difference between maybe somebody who's here with ill intent versus somebody who's truly here because they care about the country?
absolutely, and great point, because we talk about all the bad ones, right? We talk about the ones that come and actually commit additional crimes, but the majority of them are just what we call economic migrants.
Yeah.
They are, and right now we even have an additional category of these migrants that not really are economic migrants, but are taking advantage that the border is open. Because I talked to them. I had one from Colombia that was he's a barber and had a barber shop in Colombia, and he sold everything. And he's standing in El Paso, Texas. Now he's homeless. He doesn't have a job. And I told him, "What are you doing, man?
Exactly.
We're worse off here than you were in Colombia." He says, "I am." But you know what he said? Because they promised me that I was going to become rich when I came to the United States. And boy, did I get upset.
Wow.
Let me tell you something about being rich. My parents came here to this country legally. And let me tell you what they did. They worked their butts off day in and day out to provide to me and my sisters, who were the first ones to graduate from college. And I am the product of the American dream, and I'm proud
Very
of
cool.
that. And so for someone to feel that entitled, that they left their country and left their business because someone was going to give them something that they felt in their mind that they were going to become rich, it's very upsetting to me. But to your point, yes, it could be easily determined. We can tell. But this administration doesn't want you to know which one's which. They are processing them as fast as come. What's your name? Jose Lopez. Next. What's your name? Jose Lopez. Go ahead. What's your name? There's no vetting. We don't know. I'll give you a quick story. An agent friend of mine was processing this guy, all tattooed on his face. His pupils, his eyeballs were tattooed black. He looked scary, right? And my friend is like, this guy needed additional screening and additional vetting that I needed to put him aside, make some phone calls, check additional databases, maybe check with his home country, whatever. It needed additional investigative reasoning. No, move him along. Admit him. And he was forced to admit him. So we're missing terrorists, we're missing rapists, and we're missing people that are just want to come and work.
But
So
this is
they're all
the
mixed
point,
together.
Victor. This is the point. I'm sorry, but it's unforgivable. I understand that's your friend. He's got probable cause to believe this guy could be a hazard or a threat. National security. He had every right to do that, but instead he followed an illegal order. Let him through. That's got to change. I mean, are you surprised to know there is not a single member of the existing cabinet, not one, has a valid oath of office? None of them. And we've served a writ quo warranto on the Attorney General, who laughed. Right? That's the state of our government. Look, man, you're part of that thin blue line. You have been. You've got to get hold of your cohorts, because the only way we salvage our republic is to enforce the Constitution. Everything must be viewed through a constitutional lens. All laws must be reviewed and applied under a constitutional theory. Period. Anyway,
I agree.
Listen, man.
I tell people, a lot of people tell me, what are the solutions? The solution, think about it.
Follow the law.
Follow the law and go back to fundamentals. We
That's
have
it.
a document. It's
That's
right
right.
here on my shelf. It's
Good,
called
man.
the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Beautiful.
That's it. You go back to fundamentals and everything will fall in place.
There you go.
And
That's it. That's the call to action right there, Victor.
There's been so much destruction. And another thing that's happened.
No, we're out of time, dude.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, I'm so sorry, Victor.
Okay, then we can go on and on.
Exactly. Well,
Yes.
let's do it again. We'll do it again sometime. Do us a favor, please update us as you find out. I'm worried about those DEA agents. Man, don't get picked up in Mexico because they're going to throw away the key. Leave while you can. All right, Victor. Thank you. Sorry. Melissa, likewise. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. God bless you guys. Good night.
God bless, guys. Have a good night.